So, di- uh, were you changing different things within that flow and seeing how the conversion is increasing? Is that what you're trying to do there?
So the way what I was trying to measure was, does customer want everything in one page even though it's a lot of content, versus does customer prefer keeping it simple, go page by page?
One, don't have too many variables in your test. Many times what happens is if you don't have too much capacity, you will feel like, okay, let me build few things and then launch one experiment. Don't do that. Because if you do that, you will not be able to conclude your experiment.
It's not always easy to reach out to customers for usability testing and interest and all of that stuff. A quick survey could help you gauge a quick interest on what the group of people are wanting.
Do you guys use any other types of experimentations in your work? Hi everyone, welcome back to our podcast, Everything Product. We talk about latest technologies and various product management concepts. This is Shanie Vuru. I'm a product manager at a startup.
This is Srinath. I'm a product manager at JP Morgan.
This is Saladi. I'm a product manager working for Best Buy.
So guys, today I have a very interesting topic which is like extremely close to my heart. So as a product manager, right, we want to learn a lot of things about the customer, and there is no easy way to find a lot of those details. But there is one proven way to get all of that is testing, especially the hypothesis testing. So today I'm going to talk about experimentation, hypothesis testing, different types of testings that we use. How do you build a hypothesis and what can you use to build your hypothesis and stuff? So before we go into the topic, right, let me ask a very simple question. Why do we even need to do experimentation? So Sydu, let me start with you.
Yeah. So I think like when we are building products, right, whatever we actually try to build or think of building is a hypothesis, right? So experimentation helps us prove the hypothesis right or wrong. Based on that, we can make decisions, data-driven decisions to build features that provide value to the user. So it's also a way for us to know very fastly what a user wants and does not want. So that's as simple as it is.
Yeah, makes sense. So we want to build things faster, build right things with minimal effort. So that's one easy way to do that. You can build some simple variations, find out what customer is understanding, what customer is doing, and based on that, we can continue to improve the products. So, Srinath, let me ask you the same question, right? So, why do you think experimentation is needed?
Experimentations have been very helpful for me, especially when I am launching or building a new product. It's hard for me to engage multiple customers, online, get them talk to me, right? Like that's so tough when you are working in a large company. So it involves a lot of operational, logistic, tactical efforts. But experiments really help me to launch that quickly and get that feedback.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Like going back to the same point, right? We want to understand as fast as possible. And especially in this world, we want to move as fast as possible so that we can launch before our customers. So testing and hypothesis testing is the best way to do that. Maybe let me go into the most well-known types of hypothesis testing, right? Which is A/B testing. So Srinath, maybe let me ask you this question. So what is A/B testing and how did you use it in your work?
Yeah, A/B testing is nothing but you are basically showing two different versions of your web page of our product to customers and trying to get the feedback which customers would prefer. So that's as simple as that. And in my work experience, I used A/B testing and one of the other testing which I'll cover later on. But A/B testing extensively, especially when I want to show an onboarding setup page for a payments product. So I was able to do an A/B testing showing different versions of that onboarding, which is very important in order for any customer to adopt a payment product, which is that onboarding flow. So I use that. It really helped me to understand which is the best and easy for customers to onboard. So that's when I used A/B testing.
So, uh, were you changing different things within that flow and seeing how the conversion is increasing? Is that what you're trying to do there?
Yes. So two typical things which I did was, one, I introduced less steps into the onboarding process. The other one was it had more kind of the steps, but split into different pages. However, there was another page where all the steps were in the one page. So the way what I was trying to measure was, does customer want everything in one page even though it's a lot of content, versus does customer prefer having keeping it simple, go page by page. So that's what I was trying to measure from the onboarding standpoint.
Got it. So these are like multiple pages and customers have like different variations of it. Okay,
Exactly.
cool. Sidhu, maybe let me jump to you. How did you use A/B testing in your career, and how was it useful for you?
Yeah, so one example comes to my mind, right? So there was this famous test which Google conducted, and I think it's called 50 Shades of Blue or something like that. Look, they were actually experimenting with different colors for the ads which show up on Gmail, and looks like one specific color was bringing in a lot of click-through rate and conversion. So they picked that, and that resulted in 200 million increase in the revenue through ads. So that's how effective A/B testing can be. Sometimes we might think this is what the right color is, but you never know unless you give it to the users and then they see it, right? On the similar lines, while I was talking through this, I know I did something similar for my newsletter previously. So previously I had a different brand, right? It was called Such Product Newsletter, and I changed it to Product Channel and rebranded it and had a new logo and all of that stuff. So with that, I was actually trying to use the same logo colors to all the newsletter format and layout and all. But surprisingly, I saw the number of subscribers go down. I didn't know why. So there is one color which Substack uses to ask users to subscribe, which is an orange color, and I was using a very bright red after that. So after that, I know I actually saw comments from people saying that it's too bright while they're looking at this on their phone. So then that was my realization, saying that sometimes you have to keep things as it is to work, make things work, rather than you changing and experimenting with things. So that was an instance for me where it helped me validate how my results were when I changed the color of just the layout. So that's how A/B testing can help you.
No, this is a good example, Sidhu, because A/B testing, typically people think that you get to a variation and then you will see higher results in terms of your metrics. But this is definitely something that I have seen in the past as well. Something will go down. Like you will think that your conversion will be higher, but it'll go down. That's actually a very good experiment. If you actually figure out very fast that something is not working out for your customers.
Yeah, and even it goes back to YouTube thumbnails, right? Even posts, right? Sometimes when the hook line on the top changes, right, and you try to do A/B testing, there are drastically different results, right? Sometimes the hook line just might get you 10 times more traffic, even though the content is completely different or it's not there. So that's how people react to different colors in different ways. Things are formatted. So it's there's also a lot of psychology involved in it, right? So yeah.
And one thing which I often learned during the product design exercise and working closely with UX and UI teams is keeping it simple. I mean, as simple as possible is really helpful to get that product adoption.
Yep. Actually, I want to give one more example, guys. This is something that I saw in one of, I think, YouTube videos or somewhere. One of Microsoft leaders was talking about it. He was like, experimentation is extremely useful. And the example he gave is there was one idea that the team had. It was very simple, like changing a couple of lines of code and then moving the content from one place to another. Seemed simple and it never got prioritized. It was there in the backlog for like a couple of quarters because everyone were like, what is the impact of it? We don't know what is the impact of it. So they never picked it up. And suddenly one of the engineers had a couple of days of free time or something like that. He was like, okay, it's a simple thing. Let me just change it and then do an experiment. And suddenly everyone got scared because there was a huge spike in click-through rate for their ads, and everyone thought it's some kind of attack or cybersecurity attack or something like that. And then what they realized is this small code change of making two lines into a single line for their ads made customers easily understand what that ad is and click on those ads. So there could be such small things that we see might not be bringing impact, but they could have like huge impact on the product.
Yeah, so I want to add another example. So Mr. Beast was testing some thumbnails, and looks like for all of his thumbnails, he had his teeth out and laughing, right? So for a thumbnail which he was testing, he was smiling just like this, right? So looks like that increased the traffic a lot. So when he posted that in Twitter X, a lot of YouTubers started copying that and testing it out in their channels.
So today our thumbnail is also all of us smiling.
Yeah, maybe.
Cool. This is very interesting. Before we go to other types of testing, right? I want to also understand the pitfalls. So there are definitely several things you need to keep in mind before you do an A/B testing, conclude your A/B testing, measuring the data, etc. So let's briefly talk about that. Srinath, any tips you can give for product managers in running a good A/B testing?
Yeah, few things to keep in mind are defining the goals, right? What is basically is your objective when you are basically building this A/B testing? That's one of the important stuff. And the second one is what is that exit criteria looks like? Because we cannot be on doing this experiment forever. We need to know clearly what those timelines are, so we can come out of it. And third, we also need to make sure we have a good way to measure our the progress, as well as whether we are able to reach the goals that we are trying to achieve with that. So these are the three things that I can think of.
Sidhu, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so something similar, but one addition thing I would add is, right, sometimes defining the persona is also very important, right? So for some features which you are testing, you might be catering to different personas, and when you are trying to test this with a mix of persona, you might not have the results which you are getting, right? So that's why I would also see if that's also a variable which you want to consider sometimes while testing A/B testing to get the right results.
Cool. Couple of things I have in mind is one, don't have too many variables in your test. Many times what happens is if you don't have too much capacity, you will feel like, okay, let me build few things and then launch one experiment. Don't do that, because if you do that, you will not be able to conclude your experiment. Even if you're able to conclude, you don't know what actually worked out. The second one that I would say is be mindful of external factors, because many times what happens is you will launch an experiment, another team which is using similar page launches an experiment. You might think that the results are because of yours, but it might be because of some external factors and seasonal factors as well. I mean, this is also external, but keep seasonality in mind. Many times you will build a lot of features for a seasonal thing. The traffic might be coming just because of that season, not because of your feature. So keep that in mind. And the last thing is, don't be emotional to an idea or a hypothesis. Many times what happens is product managers come up with an idea and they'll be thinking, dude, this is an excellent idea. But don't get married to an idea. Rather, look at the data and make conclusions out of that. Sometimes people will be like, this is very closer. Maybe I'll keep it for a few more days and then my idea might win. So don't do that. As soon as you hit the threshold, as soon as you see the p value, um, conclude the experiment and say whether it was successful or not. Awesome, guys. Let's jump to the next topic, right? I've seen this a lot in marketing folks, multivariate testing. This is not something very prominent, but I've seen personally happening at few places. So let's talk briefly about that, right? So, Sidhu, what is a multivariate testing, and have you used it in your career anytime?
Yeah, so multivariate, so A/B testing is testing two different versions, right? Multivariate is testing different things in multiple different versions and seeing, right, what is your hypothesis true or wrong. So maybe to give an example, right, let's take a web page, right, where on one version you're testing the click to act, call to action, right? So are people responding to it? Are they enough conversions or no? The second one, maybe you're testing the color scheme of the page, right? How people are reacting to that page. And the next one, you are also testing different images you use for a product, right? So that's also something people might people's reactions might change based on the image or the picture they say. So you basically try to run all of these experiments into different variations and see how they come. So based on that, you can say that these combinations with the others are working well, or this combinations with the other one works well. So that's how you do multivariate testing.
Cool. Do you have any examples that you used in Best Buy or somewhere?
Yeah, so couple of examples, right? So Best Buy has something called the Power Week, which is holiday sales, right? So which is like for any retail or any commerce company, right? It's very important, right? So and these times you test a lot of different variations of the products, the sales, and all of that stuff. So that's where a lot of multivariate testing is used, and this is segment to different traffic and all of that stuff. And sometimes it has to be very fast to because hours of sales could affect in a lot of revenue.
Got it. Hmm. Srinath, have you used multivariate testing anytime?
I mean, I think I have a very similar example like what Sidhu just mentioned. We were basically trying to promote our the payment methods on different using different banners and various Amazon pages, and we were basically changing the font, the colors, the banners, and also the placement to figure out, understand, like, okay, where are we getting the higher click-through rates, where are we getting more conversions, that kind of stuff for a particular payment method. I don't want to name it, but that was very helpful to understand when we did the multivariate testing.
Nice. Yeah, I've seen this a lot in marketing. So I can give you a very clear example of what I did in the past. So one of our products is Credit Karma, right, for Intuit. And then Credit Karma launched a feature called debt management. Given that it's a very new feature, I want to call this out, right? The primary difference I see in multivariate versus A/B testing. I think A/B testing is typically done for established products or products that have been there for some time, which are looking for growth, which are looking for those minor changes that can bring the traffic. Multivariate testing is something where you want to grab attention of the customers so that they can do next steps. And that's what we did as well. Like in Credit Karma, we were trying to launch a new feature called debt management, and we wanted to grab that attention from the customer by putting a marketing banner. So our design team came up with 5 different variations on what is the hero image, what is the text, what is the button, etc. that eventually converted the customer. So we tested all 5 of them at the same time with the distribution of the customers. And then what we ended up seeing is one of those had like extremely higher click-through rates compared to the others. So this is where I think multivariate testing is going to be extremely useful. Cool. The next one I want to talk about, I think this is the most prominent one in terms of testing with the customer, usability testing. Building a product, actually taking it to the customer, talking to the customer to figure out whether it is working out or not. So let's talk a little bit about that. So Sidhu, maybe let me start with you again. So how did you use usability testing? How do you think it's useful for product managers?
Yeah, so I think usability testing is more like observing the users, right, and see how they interact with the product, and you basically look for any areas of improvement on how the people are using the product, right? So there could be a lot of questions once you launch a product, right? Are people finding the right things to go to? Are people, looking at the right places where you want them to look at, and all of that? So and all of this could be tracked if it's a web app or an application, but sometimes when it's a physical product, it's very hard, right? Even for a website or an application, some of the things you cannot track, right? So I think usability testing helps products in that space, very much. To give an example, right? Previously, when I was working for Bosch, we used to develop automotive diagnostic tools. So these are tools which are, almost think of it as a tablet which you hook it up to the vehicle, can diagnose the vehicle, right? But sometimes when you're launching new features into that uh, uh, tablet, right? So it's, you don't know how people use that, and sometimes these procedures are very complex. It's not easy to follow. It's not as straightforward as, you operate your PC, right? But when we launch these features, right, we give it to a small set of focus group of people and see how they're using it. Are they finding the right things or no. And each of the user or the user group is given a task asking, maybe they'll perform a repair procedure, how much time it takes for them to find the right space where they can activate that, and are they able to follow the instructions? If they're stuck, where are they going out? So all of these things, right? So, and some interesting things you find out is people are not able to find the right help button, right, when they are stuck, or people are not basically understanding what to click on when they move on to the next page. So these are all very interesting observations which you can take into consideration and improve the overall flow. So that's where I would use usability tests.
Sidhu, were you the one who told me this example in the past where you tried out a tablet instead of having a physical button for your customer,
Yeah, that's
and
right.
they
So
had a very bad feedback?
yeah, so I think all of these tools are used by shop technicians, and they are used to certain way of using tools, right? Then we had an initiative where we wanted to change everything into tablets, right? Because buttons, you cannot change things faster. The iteration product iterations are longer, and if it's a touch screen, you can change the layout and make updates very fast, right? But people had the muscle memory of, they were very fast in operating these diagnostic tools. When we changed that to tablets, right, people had to think before they click buttons, so that made them uncomfortable. So imagine, we had these phones before, right? I remember in our undergrad days we used to operate phones keeping them under the bench even without looking at the keypad. Now we cannot do that, right? You remember each button had three different alphabets, but we were still messaging and texting, right? At that time. But now we have to look at the phone to do that. I think it's a give and take, right? Sometimes you have to compromise ease of use to give more functionality and value to users. We found that, but we were able to navigate that. If we could have stuck to the button clicks, right, we would have been out of business by now.
I really like
Makes
your
sense.
phone example. I think a lot of us can relate to that.
Yeah. Cool. Srinath, did you have any experiences using usability testing, and how do you like it?
I'm really a fan of usability testing. I think, as Sidhu mentioned, we're trying to measure the how basically user friendly the product is, right? So especially this is handy when we launch new products for the first time, which are not there in the market, where you're trying to understand, is the product having any customer friction? Is this what the customers are looking for? Can the customers easily navigate and get what they want and all that stuff, right? So we used when we launched a payment method for the first time in a new country, in Europe. So we did that usability testing with a few focus group members working along with our UX team, so where we observed how the person is setting up that payment method, configuring the payment method, using various reporting and analytical efforts within the account for doing any payment reconciliation, such as those, and also how do they make payments online. So that really gave us an end-to-end picture how a customer is using our product, as well as understand various customer friction points across the journey, starting from placing the order to the payment. So overall, I mean, I'm a really fan of usability testing, and it was pretty handy. But there are definitely some cons. I mean, it takes some effort and time. You need to get people on board you need to make sure you're all operational, tactical, logistics, and everything is ready. But
Yeah.
it's helpful.
Yeah, usability testing, the way I would see is the quickest, because imagine you are building a product and then you want to get some feedback. You can literally go to a person sitting next to you and then say, "Hey, this is something that I built. What do you think?" Obviously, not the engineer who built it, but someone else who could use the product. The same way, right? Like, you can actually reach out to the customer, shoot some blind emails, and then find people who are interested to test the product. It's the easiest thing to do, but the problem comes when you want to scale it out. If you want
Yeah.
to test it out with, like, let's say you have million customers who are using your product, you can't test with 5 people and say this is good. You need a good amount of sample size. So for that, I think we go to like A/B testing, multivariate testing, and stuff.
And usability testing, right, sometimes companies use it to make it hard for users. So I by mistake subscribed to Uber Eats a month ago. I scrambled 30 minutes to find the unsubscribe button. I was still not able to find it. apparently looks like you have to chat with the customer care agent to get it cancelled. And
Oh wow.
last week when I was talking to one of my friend, he also had that. I don't know if everybody has the same thing or no, but it's not easy. They wantedly make it very, very difficult for you to unsubscribe for the subscription.
Crazy. I've seen that logic in gyms. Like once you get a gym membership, you literally have to go to the gym once again to get it
Fill a
cancelled.
form, right?
Yeah.
Oh
Sometimes.
God, it's so crazy. Yeah.
Yep. Cool. Before we wrap up, right, I want to ask a couple of questions. So one is like, do you guys use any other types of experimentations in your work?
Yeah, so a couple of other things, right? Sometimes I've used surveys to do that. Uh, if you ask me how do you do experimentation with surveys, right? So there's a hypothesis saying that certain features will do good and certain features might not do good. But what I used to do is I used to send out a survey saying that imagine you have $100. How would you split the amount between these features? So that was one way to validate if there's interest in specific feature or not for a customer. And it's not always easy to reach out to customers for usability testing and interest and all of that stuff. A quick survey could help you gauge a quick interest on what the person or group of people are wanting. So that's one way of experimenting.
Do you actually give that $100, Sidhu?
No. We just say that you have an imaginary currency to spend, and how do you spend that? That will tell us, like, right, people allocating the amount to more amount of feature will tell us it's really, really important for them, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
got it.
And one other way of doing experimentation is prototypes. So sometimes it's very late when you do A/B testing at the final product. So you can also do prototyping and show it to users and see what performs good, right? So that doesn't give you the complete data, but at least gives a glimpse of what people might want.
The way I
Makes
think about A/B testing is like once you probably a product is matured and you need probably higher customer conversion rates or higher click-through rates, that's when probably I would use a A/B testing versus a prototyping or usability testing that Sidhu mentioned about. I think probably it's in the proof of concept stages and all that stuff.
makes sense. Actually, let me ask one more thing, right? Um, what is the absolutely bad time to do an A/B testing?
Holiday time. That is what I'll say, especially November, December. I mean, when I was in Amazon, I mean, e-commerce, right? It's so busy November and December. It's very bad timing to do any of that testing because everything is cute. I think you covered that earlier, but when you were telling that, I was exactly relating to that.
Yeah,
Maybe if it's a mature product, you do A/B testing on certain elements, but if you want to test the complete flow only after your product is released, I think that's like a lot of feedback loop, right? So you have to go through a lot of development cycle again to get all of the changes back.
and to get even
Yeah.
those kinds of initiatives approved is gonna be extremely difficult. It's like, dude, what is the ROI of revamping the entire thing?
Yeah, and
I
even
want
like
to
Figma helps us with some of this stuff, right? You can build a very low fidelity prototype and do every kind of A/B testing there if you have access to
that
the
is true.
customers.
It actually feels like you're using an actual product because you can actually connect everything, make sure customer clicks on it, and then make the flow go as much as you like. Yeah,
That's right. Yeah.
We actually did that in my previous company. We used, instead of Figma, we used InVision. It's a similar product like Figma.
Yeah.
So we used that. So exactly, it was a very small feature. So that's why we didn't want to do again the development efforts and all that stuff. So we wanted to get a simple feedback. So we used in that case.
cool. I have one more question. Either of you can jump in. So typically, A/B testing or hypothesis testing is catered towards front-end products, right? Front-end heavy products, which have like B2C customers using complete form or fill out application, etc., etc. Do you think backend teams can do experimentation?
So backend teams can do experimentation. What I've seen is stress testing that backend teams have often done basically invoking the different APIs to understand the stress testing part. So that's when I've seen people using. I mean, it's kind of an experiment. They're just trying to increase the load and trying to figure out, okay, if um, if our API is scalable and if that will support this much load or not. So that's how I can relate to. But I don't know if you or do have any other thoughts there.
I don't know, this came up to my mind, right? So think of ChatGPT right now. So there is not much front end involved. There is like text being generated. There is nothing UI, nobody's testing anything. But honestly, if I think about it, the variations of ChatGPT is basically experimentation in the backend, because they're training a model and then getting an outcome, seeing whether it makes sense for the customer, sending the feedback loop, based on the feedback loop, updating the model again, and then coming back and giving the outcome to the customer and seeing whether the customer is liking it or not. So it is all experimentation, which is primarily driven by backend systems, either through algorithms or somewhere, but giving that feedback loop and then optimizing it. So, what do you think?
Yeah, and a lot of e-commerce websites do something similar. So they have feature flags. So these are flags which are turned on and off based on the traffic
That's true.
and the
Yep,
holiday
yep.
event. So yeah, but I think the ChatGPT example, right? It's learning as it's
Yeah.
interacting with the people. So I think that'll be the future of A/B testing, right? So machine
That's
optimizing
true.
rather than a human coming in between and deciding.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, I
Cool.
really liked your ChatGPT example. Yep.
I want to ask one last thing, right, before we close the video. Is all we talked about is hypothesis testing. So everyone's coming up with some idea, creating a hypothesis, building an A/B test or multivariate test or anything. So let's briefly spend some time on how do you come up with ideas and how do you create a hypothesis. So what are the different mechanisms you guys use to come to ideas, come or bring up new ideas?
I have a few. Feel free to add to those. I mean, we use various qualitative and quantitative metrics to understand. One thing which was very helpful was the customer satisfaction surveys, the net promoter scores, where a lot of customers talk about some of the stuff probably that is missing from our product features. And we take that and do a sentiment or text mining to understand how many people are asking about it. And accordingly, once we have a good justification, we try to go and create an A/B testing like experience to understand if that's really helping to move our needle or not. So those are a couple of stuff. In addition, we also have like a lot of roundtables with our the customer facing teams like sales, professional services, and all that stuff. We do it every month to understand the competitive landscape, any other industry insights, the trends that we probably are not aware. I mean, that will really help us to keep pace with the market, which is very important. So these are some of the strategies which we use. Anything that you want to add, Sidhu?
Yeah, so I think the way I look at it, right, hypothesis is that, right, like anything would start from the features which you are adding and what metrics it is affecting or moving, right? So imagine that I want to increase engagement for my product. And my hypothesis is that this specific feature, maybe let's say that introducing gamification will increase the overall engagement of my product. And that's my hypothesis, right? How do I prove that? One way of doing it is I'll build something, a gamification feature into that product and then see if it's people are liking or no, and is the metric going up. The other way of doing it is creating a very quick prototype in Figma and try to see if people are using it with more use or no, and that will give me some signals on whether I should do it or no. And then moving forward, maybe I'll have a higher fidelity prototype, right, where I'll maybe do usability tests with people. So that will give me more better signals. So I think it's basically justifying your move towards what you want to do to move that metric up. That's where we use hypothesis in all of these different spaces, right?
Yeah, that's true. I think overall you're moving towards your goal. Like, what is your objective? What are you trying to achieve? Based on that, think of some of ideas. I mean, one other thing that I do a lot is doing brainstorming sessions with the team, because team in itself is observing the product in different directions. I'm sure they would be getting feedback from different people, or they might be seeing features that are not doing bad. They might be looking at customer reviews, or their friends might be coming to them and telling that, hey, why don't you improve this, etc. So, doing those brainstorming sessions with the team, and definitely including your operations, customer success teams, etc., will help you get all of those ideas, make them into hypotheses, and then finally building the features. Awesome, wonderful conversation, guys. Any other final tips? Let's do it the same way, right? If there is 2 tips that you want to give to our audience, what would that be?
Yeah.
Sidhu, let me start with you.
Yeah, so I think make sure you have a clear problem and a hypothesis which you want to prove right or wrong with the experiment which you're conducting, right? And I think that's the first step. The second step is choosing the right metrics where you want to measure. Sometimes you're saying that you want to test something, but you're measuring it a different way, which is not actually telling you if you are getting value to the users or no. So I think figuring out what the hypothesis is, defining the problem, and then getting the right metrics, and then I think analyzing it and reacting to that. So these 3 steps, if you follow the right way, I think you'll be definitely successful in experimentation.
Awesome. Srinath, what do you think?
The first thing that comes to my mind is keeping it simple. And don't complicate experiments. That it may be hard for people to follow what drove that change. And the second, be aware of the external factors. We spoke a lot about that during this call. So be aware of, like, especially holiday times, peak times. Don't launch experiments because we might not know what is driving that needle.
Cool. Maybe my tips are, the very first thing is have that experimentation mindset with the team. Many times what happens is product managers want to try it out, but if that mindset is not there with the team, it's not going to go anywhere. Everyone will be in the thought process that, dude, I built it, I just want to launch it. But bring that mindset with the team. Second one is data focused. Like, in order for your team to be hypothesis driven, they need to be data centric as well. So bring that mindset with the team as well. And I would say explicitly keep a goal. I want to launch 5 experiments this quarter. I want to launch 20 experiments this year. So having that number itself will motivate the team to achieve that goal. So that's another tip that I would give. Awesome. Thank you for the conversation, guys. Loved it. Have a nice day. See ya.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.